Silas Hayes could hear everything. Every whispered conversation. Every footstep in the hallway. Every beeping machine around his hospital bed. He could hear the doctors telling his cousin that his brain was likely damaged beyond repair. He could hear his business partners discussing how to move his company's assets before he officially passed away. He could hear the nurses debating whether he felt pain when they changed his position. But Silas couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink to show he was still inside this broken body. The accident had happened 3 weeks ago. His luxury car had skidded on black ice, flipped twice and slammed into a concrete barrier. The impact had severed something in his spine, trapped him in what the doctors called a persistent vegetative state. Except he wasn't vegetative. He was a prisoner in his own flesh, screaming silently while the world moved on without him. The worst part wasn't the paralysis. It was listening to people he'd trusted for years reveal their true nature. If we wait another month, we can have him declared incompetent, his business partner, Frank Morrison, whispered near his bedside. Then we move the company offshore. He won't know the difference. What about his family? Another voice asked. His cousin doesn't care. She just wants the insurance payout. No one really cares about Silas. He never cared about anyone else. Silas wanted to scream that he was right here, that he could hear them, that they were stealing everything he'd built. But his body refused to obey. He was trapped in darkness, listening to his life being dismantled piece by piece. Then the door opened and a different voice filled the room. Good morning, Mr. Hayes. I'm Mary Johnson. I'll be cleaning your room today, but I wanted to introduce myself properly first. Her voice was warm and gentle, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Silas felt her presence beside his bed, and then something unexpected happened. She touched his hand, not to move him or check his vitals, but just to hold it for a moment. I know you might not hear me, Mary continued, but my aunt was in a condition like yours once. She could hear everything even when doctors said she couldn't. So I'm going to talk to you like you're listening just in case. Is that okay? Silas felt something wet on his cheek. A tear. He was crying and he couldn't control it. Oh, Mary said softly. Oh, Mr. Hayes. You can hear me, can't you? Have you ever felt invisible, like your voice didn't matter? Have you ever watched people dismiss someone who needed help? If stories about real human connection and second chances matter to you, please subscribe and comment below. Tell me, what would you do if you could hear everything but couldn't respond? Would you give up or would you keep fighting? The fluorescent lights above Silas Hayes' hospital bed hummed constantly, a sound that had become the soundtrack to his nightmare. 23 days had passed since the accident. 23 days of being awake inside a body that refused to respond. 23 days of listening to people talk about him like he was already gone. Silas had spent 52 years building his commercial real estate empire. He'd been ruthless, efficient, and completely focused on success. He'd sacrificed relationships, ignored family, and kept everyone at arm's length. Now, lying paralyzed in bed, he was learning the cost of that isolation. His room at County Memorial Hospital was on the 4th floor, painted in pale blue walls that were supposed to be calming. Medical equipment surrounded his bed, monitors tracking his heart rate, for stands with bags of clear fluid, a ventilator helping him breathe. He'd been upgraded from the ICU 2 weeks ago when his vitals stabilized, but the doctors had made it clear they didn't expect improvement. Persistent vegetative state, Dr. Richard Patterson had told Silas's cousin Diane during morning rounds. Silas could picture the doctor's weathered face and tired eyes as he delivered the news. His body functions, but there's no sign of consciousness. Brain activity is minimal. We recommend transferring him to a long-term care facility where he can receive appropriate management. Management. The word had echoed in Silas's mind. They were talking about warehousing him until his body finally gave up. Diane had barely visited after that first week. His cousin had inherited a small trust from his parents and clearly hoped for more from Silas's estate. She'd signed whatever papers the doctors presented, never questioning, never fighting for him. The business partners were worse. Frank Morrison and Todd Weber had been with Silas for 15 years. They'd built Morrison Weber Hayes properties together, turning small strip malls into a portfolio worth $200 million. Now Frank visited twice a week, always with Todd, always speaking in hushed tones near the door where they thought Silas couldn't hear. The board meeting is next Tuesday, Todd had whispered yesterday. If we present the medical evaluations showing he's incapacitated, we can invoke the succession clause. What about his shares? Diane will sign them over for the right price. She doesn't know what they're worth and she needs money now. We offer her $2 million, she thinks she's rich, and we get controlling interest. $2 million for shares worth $40 million. Brilliant. They'd laughed. Actually laughed while discussing how to steal his life's work. Silas had tried to move, tried to scream, tried to do anything to show he was aware. Nothing. His body was a tomb and he was buried alive inside it. The nurses were kinder but equally convinced he couldn't hear them. They talked about their personal lives while changing his bedding, discussed their dating problems while adjusting his complained about their schedules while turning him to prevent bedsores. He'd learned more about their lives than he'd ever known about his own employees. Nurse Patricia Chen worked double shifts to pay for her son's college. Nurse Robert Taylor was going through a divorce. Nurse Sandra Kim's mother had dementia, and Sandra was struggling to afford her care. Silas listened to their problems and realized he'd never once asked about the personal lives of people who worked for him. He'd been too busy making money to notice the humans around him. Then one Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. The door to his room opened at 2:47 p.m. Silas knew the time because he'd learned to track it by the shift changes and meal deliveries. He expected Patricia or Robert, but instead he heard new footsteps. Lighter. More hesitant. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes. I'm Mary Johnson." Her voice was different from the others. Where the nurses spoke with professional efficiency, Mary's voice carried genuine warmth. She had a slight southern accent, smooth and melodic. "I'll be cleaning your room today," she continued, "but I wanted to introduce myself properly first." Silas felt her approach his bed. Most people walked quickly through his room, efficient and detached. Mary moved slowly, like she was entering a space that mattered. "I know you might not hear me," Mary said closer now, "but my aunt was in a condition like yours once. She could hear everything even when doctors said she couldn't. So I'm going to talk to you like you're listening just in case. Is that okay?" She touched his hand. Not the clinical touch of nurses checking his pulse or adjusting his position, but a gentle, human touch. Like she was greeting a friend. That's when Silas felt it. The tear. It rolled from his eye, down his temple onto the pillow. He was crying. Somehow his body had produced a response. "Oh," Mary said softly, and he heard her breath catch. "Oh, Mr. Hayes. You can hear me, can't you?" She didn't run for the doctors. She didn't start shouting for help. Instead, she squeezed his hand gently and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "It's okay. I see you. I see you're in there." More tears came. 3 weeks of being invisible, of screaming silently into the void, and finally someone saw him. Someone recognized he was still human. "I'm going to talk to the doctors," Mary said, "but first I want you to know something. My aunt, she was trapped like you for 6 months. Everyone said she'd never wake up. But she did. She came back to us. And you know what helped her? People treating her like she was still there. People talking to her, holding her hand, playing her favorite music. So that's what I'm going to do for you, Mr. Hayes. Whether you can hear me or not, I'm going to treat you like the person you are. Okay." Silas couldn't nod. Couldn't speak. But somehow Mary seemed to understand his answer. "Okay then," she said gently. "Let me go get Dr. Patterson. Don't worry. I'm not leaving you alone anymore." She was gone less than 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Silas could hear her voice in the hallway, insistent but respectful. "Dr. Patterson, I need you to examine Mr. Hayes again. I think he might be conscious." "Mary, I know you mean well, but we've run extensive tests. There's no sign of awareness. He cried when I talked to him. Real tears. Please just look." Dr. Patterson's footsteps approached, heavier and slower than Mary's. Silas heard him enter the room with Mary following. "Mr. Hayes," the doctor said in a clinical tone, "I'm going to perform some tests. If you can hear me, try to show a response." Silas focused every particle of his being on moving something, anything. His finger. His toe. An eyelid. Nothing happened. "Mary, there's no response. Sometimes patients have involuntary reactions. Tears can be automatic, not emotional. But I understand you want to help, but giving false hope isn't kind. Mr. Hayes is in a persistent vegetative state. His body has automatic responses, but there's no consciousness behind them." Silas wanted to scream. He'd finally had someone who believed him, and now the doctor was convincing her she was wrong. But Mary didn't give up. "Dr. Patterson, I respect your expertise. But I'm asking you to try something. My aunt's doctor used a series of questions with specific responses. Can you ask Mr. Hayes to blink once for yes and twice for no?" "Mary, please, just try. What harm can it do?" Dr. Patterson sighed. "Fine. Mr. Hayes, if you can hear me, blink once." Silas focused on his eyelids. He tried before thousands of times, but never with someone actually looking for a response. He imagined the muscles, the nerves, the simple act of closing and opening his eyes. Nothing. Mr. Hayes, blink twice if you can hear me. Still nothing. Silas felt despair crushing him. He'd come so close to being seen and now he was failing the test. I'm sorry, Mary. There's no response. Wait, Mary said. Maybe blinking is too much. Can he squeeze your hand? We've tried that. Try again. Please. Silas felt Dr. Patterson's hand grasp his. Mr. Hayes, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Silas poured everything into his right hand. Every thought, every desperate need to communicate, every ounce of his will. For a moment nothing happened. Then, like a dam breaking, he felt the tiniest movement. His index finger twitched. Did you see that? Mary's voice was triumphant. That was a spasm. Patients often have. It wasn't a spasm. Ask him again. Dr. Patterson paused, then spoke more carefully. Mr. Hayes, if that was intentional, do it again. Squeeze my hand. Silas tried again. It was harder the second time, like the first attempt had drained him. But he felt it. Another small movement, barely perceptible, but there. My God, Dr. Patterson said quietly. Mary, you might be right. I need to run more tests. Extensive tests. This could be locked-in syndrome, not a vegetative state. What's the difference? Mary asked. Everything. If he's locked in, he's fully conscious. He can hear, think, understand. He just can't move or speak. We need to get neurology down here immediately. Dr. Patterson rushed from the room, already calling for specialists. But Mary stayed. She took Silas's hand again, her touch gentle and reassuring. You're not alone anymore, Mr. Hayes, she said softly. I don't know why I walked into your room today, but I'm glad I did. We're going to figure this out together. I promise you that. For the first time in 23 days, Silas Hayes felt something other than despair. He felt hope. The neurology team arrived within an hour. Dr. Patterson had called ahead, describing Mary's observations and the finger movements. They brought equipment Silas had never seen before. Sensors, computers, devices with wires and blinking lights. Dr. Sarah Mitchell led the team. She was younger than Dr. Patterson, maybe 40, with short black hair and green scrubs. She spoke directly to Silas, not about him, which was already an improvement. Mr. Hayes, I'm Dr. Mitchell. I specialize in consciousness disorders. We're going to run some tests to determine your level of awareness. These tests won't hurt, but they'll take time. Mary Johnson here has advocated strongly for you, and I'm glad she did. Let's see what we can learn. They spent 3 hours testing him. They asked him to move different body parts, to follow lights with his eyes, to respond to various stimuli. Silas tried with everything he had. By the end, he'd managed to move his right index finger 3 times and his left big toe once. Small victories, but they were evidence. Dr. Mitchell reviewed the results with Dr. Patterson in the hallway, but Silas could hear every word. It's locked-in syndrome, Dr. Mitchell said. Classic presentation. The car accident damaged his ventral pons, disrupting the pathways between his brain and body. But his cognitive functions are intact. He's been conscious this entire time. 3 weeks, Dr. Patterson said, and Silas heard the guilt in his voice. He's been aware for 3 weeks and we missed it. It's notoriously difficult to diagnose. Most cases are missed initially. The important thing is we know now and we can adjust his care accordingly. What's the prognosis? Guarded. Some locked-in patients regain movement over time. Others remain paralyzed but can learn to communicate through eye movements or other methods. We'll start him on aggressive physical therapy and set up assistive technology. The key is treating him like the fully conscious person he is. They came back into the room together. Dr. Mitchell spoke to Silas while Dr. Patterson looked at Mary, who'd waited patiently by the window. Mr. Hayes, you've been through something terrible, and I'm sorry we didn't realize sooner that you were aware. But things are going to change now. We're going to get you equipment to help you communicate. We'll start with an eye-tracking computer, something you can control with eye movements to type out messages. It will take practice, but it works. Do you understand? Silas managed to move his finger once. Yes. Good. We're also going to increase your physical therapy. The brain is adaptable. With work, you might regain some movement. No guarantees, but we're going to try. Are you willing to fight for this? Another finger movement. Yes. Dr. Mitchell smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. Mary, thank you for pushing us to look closer. You may have saved this man's life. Mary stepped forward. Can I stay with him for a while? I know it's not part of my job, but... Stay as long as you like, Dr. Mitchell said. In fact, I'd like you to be part of his care team if you're willing. Patients do better with consistent, caring support, and you've already shown more dedication than most people would. I'd be honored, Mary said simply. After the doctors left, Mary pulled a chair close to Silas's bed and sat down. The afternoon sun came through the window, casting bright light across the room. Silas could sense the warmth even if he couldn't feel it properly. Well, Mary said, I guess we're in this together now. Let me tell you a bit about myself, since you're stuck listening to me. She laughed, a sound that made Silas feel lighter somehow. I'm 34 years old. I've worked at this hospital for 2 years, cleaning rooms, doing whatever needs doing. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest and it pays the bills. Barely. I have a daughter, Ruby. She's 7 years old and the light of my life. Smart as a whip, that girl. Wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up because she loves animals. Mary paused and Silas heard her take a breath. My husband, Jerome, he passed away 3 years ago. Construction accident. He was building a high-rise downtown, and there was an equipment failure. He fell 6 stories. They said he died instantly, that he didn't suffer. I hope that's true. Her voice caught slightly, but she continued. Jerome was a good man. Best man I ever knew. He worked hard, loved his family, always had a smile even when things were tough. We grew up together in South Carolina, got married young, had Ruby right away. Money was always tight, but we were happy. You know what I mean. Silas wanted to tell her he didn't know, that he'd never had that kind of simple happiness. He'd had money, success, properties, but never what she was describing. After Jerome died, I moved up here for work. Better job opportunities, better schools for Ruby. My mama helps when she can, but she's got her own health problems. So it's mostly just me and Ruby figuring things out. Mary stood and walked to the window. I work 2 jobs. Hospital during the day, cleaning offices at night 3 times a week. Ruby stays with our neighbor Mrs. Chen on those nights. She's a sweet old lady, doesn't charge much. Still, it's hard. Some days I'm so tired I can barely stand. But Ruby needs things. School supplies, clothes, food. Childhood doesn't wait for you to get your finances together. She turned back to face Silas's bed. I'm telling you all this because I want you to know you're not just a patient to me. I see you as a person. And I think you need to see me as a person too. Whatever happens with your recovery, we're going to be spending a lot of time together. Might as well be friends, right? Silas moved his finger. Yes. Mary smiled. Good. Now, I need to actually clean this room before my supervisor comes looking for me. But I'll be back tomorrow and we'll talk more. Is that okay? Another finger movement. Yes. Perfect. You rest now, Mr. Hayes. Things are looking up. After Mary left, Silas lay in the quiet room and thought about what she'd said. She'd shared her life with him, the good and the bad, without asking for anything in return. She'd fought for him when no one else had. She'd seen him when everyone else looked past him. In 52 years, Silas had never met anyone quite like Mary Johnson. The next day, Mary arrived at 2 p.m. sharp. She brought a small book with her, a paperback with a worn cover. Good afternoon, Mr. Hayes, she said cheerfully. I brought something for you. My aunt, when she was locked in, she said music and books helped her stay connected. So I thought I'd read to you if that's okay? Finger movement. Yes. I grabbed this from home. It's one of my favorites. Nothing fancy, just a good story. Sometimes we need good stories, don't we? She settled into the chair and began reading. Her voice was perfect for it, expressive and warm, bringing the characters to life. Silas found himself getting lost in the narrative, forgetting for moments at a time that he was paralyzed. They spent an hour like that. When Mary finished the chapter, she closed the book and smiled at him. We'll continue tomorrow. I've got to get back to work, but I wanted you to have something to look forward to. Over the next week, a routine developed. Mary came every afternoon at 2 p.m. She'd spend her break sitting with Silas, sometimes reading, sometimes just talking. She told him about Ruby's school projects, about her favorite recipes, about the small joys and frustrations of her daily life. Ruby got an A on her math test, Mary said on Thursday. She's been struggling with multiplication, but she practiced every night and it paid off. She was so proud. I took her for ice cream to celebrate, even though it meant we'd be eating rice and beans for a few extra days. Some things are worth it. Silas listened and learned what real life looked like. Not board meetings and property acquisitions, but school tests and ice cream celebrations. Not networking events and business deals, but neighbors helping neighbors and families making sacrifices for each other. The eye-tracking computer arrived on Friday. A technician named Kevin spent 2 hours calibrating it, teaching Silas how to move his eyes to select letters and form words. It was exhausting work, but by the end of the session, Silas had typed his first message. "Thank you." Kevin called Mary into the room. "He wanted to tell you something." Mary read the screen and her eyes filled with tears. "You're welcome, Mr. Hayes. You're so very welcome." That weekend, Silas practiced with the computer. It was slow and frustrating. Forming a single sentence took 5 minutes. But it was communication. It was connection. It was proof he was still human. On Monday, Mary arrived at her usual time. Silas had been preparing all morning for what he wanted to say. When she sat down, he began typing, his eyes moving deliberately across the virtual keyboard. It took 10 minutes, but finally the words appeared on the screen. "I heard everything. 3 weeks. They want my company. Cousin wants money. They think I don't know." Mary read the message twice, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to anger. "Oh, Mr. Hayes. I'm so sorry. That's horrible." Silas continued typing. "You saved me. Only one who saw me." "Why?" Mary thought for a moment before answering. "Because my aunt taught me that consciousness isn't always obvious. Because everyone deserves to be seen as human. Because it was the right thing to do." More typing. "Most people don't do right thing." "Maybe not," Mary agreed. "But that doesn't mean we should stop trying. My mama always said kindness costs nothing but means everything. I try to live by that." Silas typed slowly. "Never had friend like you." Mary reached over and gently squeezed his hand. "Well, you do now. And friends look out for each other. So tell me what you need. How can I help?" For the first time in 3 weeks, Silas felt like he might survive this. Not just physically, but in every way that mattered. Mary had given him back his voice. Now he needed to use it. Tuesday morning brought new visitors. Frank Morrison and Todd Weber arrived at 10 a.m., their expensive suits and designer watches out of place in the sterile hospital room. Silas watched them through his limited vision as they stood near the door, speaking in low voices they clearly thought he couldn't hear. "The eye-tracking thing is a problem," Frank said. "If he can communicate." "The doctors say it's just basic responses," Todd interrupted. "Yes, no simple needs. Not like he can give detailed instructions or anything. His brain is still damaged." "Are we sure about that?" Patterson confirmed it yesterday. "The locked-in diagnosis doesn't change the fact that he can't run a company. We proceed as planned." They approached Silas's bed with practiced expressions of concern. Frank spoke first, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Silas, buddy. We came as soon as we heard about the new diagnosis. This is great news. You're in there after all." Silas focused on the computer screen, moving his eyes to type. "Yes. Hear everything." The words appeared slowly, letter by letter. Frank and Todd exchanged a quick glance. "That's wonderful," Todd said. "We've been so worried about you. The business has been tough without your leadership." Silas typed, "How is company?" Good. We're managing. The board has been supportive. Everyone wants what's best for you. What happens now?" Frank leaned closer. "Well, the doctors say recovery will be long. Could be years before you're functional again, if ever. In the meantime, the company needs leadership. We've filed papers to have Todd and me take over operations temporarily. Just until you're better." Diane signed off on it. She agreed it was best for everyone. Silas wanted to scream. They were taking over his company while pretending it was for his benefit. But he couldn't reveal what he'd heard, not yet. Instead, he typed, "Thank you for managing." "Of course, buddy. That's what partners do. You rest and focus on recovery. We'll handle everything else." They left 20 minutes later, satisfied they'd maintained the illusion. Silas lay in his bed, fury building inside him. He'd spent 30 years building that company. He'd sacrificed relationships, health, everything for success. And now these men were stealing it while he lay helpless. When Mary arrived at 2 p.m., Silas was still fuming. She took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, settling into her chair. Silas typed out the whole story. The visit, the false concern, the plans to take over his company. Mary listened, her expression growing more upset with each word. "That's theft," she said when he finished. "Plain and simple. Can't you tell someone? A lawyer." Silas typed, "And no proof. They never said it near computer. My word against theirs. What about recordings? Can we record them next time? Illegal without consent. Would be thrown out." Mary sat back, frustrated. "So they just get away with it?" "For now. When I recover more, we'll fight. But takes time. Time they're using to steal from you." "Yes. Mary was quiet for a moment, then she spoke carefully. Mr. Hayes, I need to tell you something. I know what it's like to lose everything. When Jerome died, we had some savings. Not much, but enough to get by for a few months. Except Jerome's company tried to say the accident was his fault, that he wasn't following safety procedures. They wanted to avoid liability. Silas typed, "What happened?" "We fought. Got a lawyer, went to court. The lawyer worked on contingency, which was good because we had no money for legal fees. It took a year, but we won. Turned out the company had been cited for safety violations before. They were the negligent ones, not Jerome. Good. The settlement paid for Jerome's funeral and kept us afloat for a while. But the legal fight was hard. I was grieving, trying to take care of a 4-year-old and dealing with lawyers and courts and depositions. There were days I wanted to give up, to just accept whatever they offered and be done with it." "Why didn't you?" Mary met his eyes. "Because Jerome deserved justice. Because Ruby deserved to know her father wasn't careless or reckless. Because sometimes you have to fight even when you're tired, even when it seems impossible. That's what I learned." She reached over and touched his hand gently. "You'll get through this, Mr. Hayes. It might take time, but you're still here. You're still fighting. That counts for something." Silas felt something shift inside him. Mary had lost her husband, fought a legal battle while grieving, and still managed to maintain her kindness and hope. If she could survive that, he could survive this. "Tell me more about Jerome," he typed. Mary's face softened, the anger about his business partners fading into something gentler. Jerome Washington Johnson. That was his full name. He hated the Washington part, said it made him sound like a founding father. But his mama loved it, so he dealt with it. She smiled at the memory. "We met in high school. I was 15, he was 16. He sat behind me in history class and kept dropping his pencil just to talk to me when I picked it up for him. Took me 3 weeks to realize he was doing it on purpose." Silas typed, "Smooth." "Not really," Mary laughed. "He was terrible at flirting. But he was genuine, you know? He didn't play games or try to act like someone he wasn't. What you saw was what you got with Jerome. I appreciated that." "When did you marry?" "Right after I graduated high school. My mama thought we were too young, and maybe we were. But Jerome had a good job lined up and we were in love. Figured we'd make it work, and we did. Had Ruby a year later and she became the center of our world." Mary pulled out her phone and showed Silas a photo. A beautiful little girl with braids, wearing a bright red dress, grinning at the camera with gap-toothed joy. Behind her stood Mary in a blue blouse, and a tall man in a green shirt with his arms around them both. Jerome had a warm smile and kind eyes. "This was Ruby's 5th birthday," Mary said. 6 months before Jerome died. Look how happy we were." Silas studied the photo. The love between the three of them was obvious, tangible even through the screen. They didn't have expensive clothes or a fancy background. The photo was taken in what looked like a small apartment. But the joy was real. "Jerome worked hard," Mary continued. "Construction paid well, but it was dangerous. He knew the risks. We talked about it sometimes, especially after Ruby was born. He was always careful, always followed safety rules. But you can't control everything." "I'm sorry," Silas typed. "Thank you. It's been 3 years and some days it still feels like yesterday. But Ruby and I, we keep going. We have to. Jerome would want us to live, not just survive. So we make the best of things. We find joy where we can." "How?" "Little things. Ruby's laughter. A good meal. A sunny day. Finishing a book. Helping someone who needs it." She gestured at Silas. "Like this. Being here with you, helping you communicate, it gives me purpose. Makes me feel like I'm doing something that matters." Silas had never thought about meaning in those terms. He'd always defined success by numbers, dollars, properties, deals closed. But Mary found meaning in moments, in connections, in small acts of kindness. "Jerome used to say that rich isn't about money," Mary said. "It's about having people who love you and being able to help others. He said the richest man in the world is the one who goes to bed knowing he made someone's day better." "Wise man," Silas typed. "He was. I miss him every day. But I'm grateful for the time we had. Some people never get to experience that kind of love. I was lucky." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Mary checked her watch and sighed. "I need to get back to work. But I'll be here tomorrow. Same time." After she left, Silas thought about her words. She'd lost her husband, was raising a daughter alone on minimum wage, and still considered herself lucky. He had millions in the bank, properties across 3 states, and had never felt lucky at all. Something was deeply wrong with that equation. The following week, Dr. Mitchell increased Silas's physical therapy. 3 times a day, a therapist named Angela worked with him, moving his limbs, trying to stimulate his muscles, testing for responses. It was exhausting and often painful, but Silas pushed through it. Every tiny movement was a victory. By Friday he could wiggle 3 fingers on his right hand and both big toes. Not much, but progress. Angela celebrated each achievement like it was a miracle, her enthusiasm contagious even in Silas's limited state. Mary visited every day during her afternoon break. They developed a routine. She'd read to him for 20 minutes, then they'd talk using his eye-tracking computer. She told him about her day, her daughter, her struggles and small victories. Silas found himself looking forward to 2 p.m. more than he'd ever looked forward to board meetings or property closings. On Tuesday of the following week, Mary appeared at his door at an unusual time, 3:30 p.m. "I hope you don't mind the different schedule today," she said, slightly out of breath. "Mrs. Chin had a doctor's appointment, so I had to bring Ruby with me to work. My supervisor said she could wait in the break room, but Ruby was worried about a friend I've been telling her about. She wanted to meet you. Is that okay?" Silas typed, "Yes. Would like to meet her. She can be a bit much sometimes. 7-year-olds don't really have volume control. But she means well." Mary stepped into the hallway and returned with Ruby. The little girl wore the same red dress from the photo, slightly faded now but clean and pressed. Her hair was styled in neat braids with colorful beads at the ends. She had her mother's warm brown eyes and her late father's bright smile. Ruby walked into the room without fear, her small hands clasped in front of her. She looked at all the medical equipment with curiosity but not alarm, then focused on Silas. "Hi, Mr. Hayes," she said in a clear, confident voice. "I'm Ruby. My mama says you're her friend and that you can't move very much but you can hear everything. Is that true?" Silas typed on his computer, "Yes. Nice to meet you, Ruby." Ruby's eyes went wide as the computer voice spoke his words. "Wow, that's so cool. You can talk with your eyes. Ruby, your dress is pretty." She beamed, doing a little twirl. "Thank you. It's my favorite. It used to be darker red, but we've washed it a lot. Mama says good clothes last when you take care of them." Mary pulled up a second chair and Ruby climbed into it, sitting on her knees to be higher. She studied Silas with the open curiosity of a child. "Mama said you were in an accident and got hurt. That must have been scary." "It was," Silas typed. "I bet. When I fell off the jungle gym at school I broke my arm and that was scary too. But it healed. The doctor said bones are good at healing." "Are your bones healing?" "Different kind of hurt. But getting better." "That's good. Mama says getting better takes time, but it happens if you keep trying. She's really smart, my mama. She knows lots of things." "She does," Silas agreed. Ruby launched into a story about her school day with the kind of enthusiastic detail only a child could provide. She talked about her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who let them have extra recess because everyone finished their spelling test quickly. She described the butterfly they'd seen on the playground and the game of tag she'd played with her friends. Silas found himself absorbed in her story. She spoke to him like he was a regular person, not a patient or a curiosity. She made eye contact, waited for his typed responses, and treated the conversation like any other. "Do you have a favorite color?" Ruby asked suddenly. Silas had to think about it. No one had asked him about his preferences in years. "Blue," he finally typed. "Blue is nice. Mine is red like my dress. Red is happy. Don't you think red is happy?" "Yes. Very happy. Do you have kids?" The question caught Silas off guard. "No." "Oh, that's sad. Kids are fun." "Well, I'm fun. Some kids are annoying. But mostly we're fun." Mary laughed. "Ruby, that's not polite." "But it's true, Mama. Tommy in my class eats paste. That's annoying." "Sounds annoying," Silas typed, surprising himself with the playful response. Ruby giggled. "See, Mama? Mr. Hayes thinks so too." For the next hour, Ruby entertained Silas with stories, questions, and observations. She showed him a drawing she'd made at school, a picture of a house with flowers and a big sun. She explained each element in detail, pointing out the purple flowers and the yellow sun with rays shooting out in all directions. "I like to draw," she announced. "I'm going to be an artist and a veterinarian when I grow up." "You can be 2 things, right?" "Yes. Can be anything you want. That's what my mama says. She says I'm smart and can do whatever I set my mind to." "Do you think I'm smart?" Silas typed carefully, "Very smart. Also kind. Like your mama." Ruby's whole face lit up. "Thank you. You're nice, Mr. Hayes. I like you." Those simple words hit Silas harder than any business compliment ever had. This child, this bright, honest, beautiful child liked him. Not his money or his properties or his business success. Just him. I like you too, Ruby. Eventually, Mary had to take Ruby to the break room so she could finish her work. But before they left, Ruby did something unexpected. She walked right up to Silas's bed, carefully avoiding the wires and tubes, and gently patted his hand. I'll come visit you again, okay? You don't have to be lonely. After they left, Silas lay in the quiet room and realized he was crying again. But these weren't tears of despair. They were something else entirely. Something he hadn't felt in decades. He felt valued. Not for what he could do or what he owned, but simply for existing. The next day, Mary apologized for Ruby's visit. I hope she wasn't too much. She can be overwhelming. Silas typed quickly, she was perfect. Best visitor I've had. Really? You're not just being polite. Really? She's special. Like her mother. Mary blushed slightly. Thank you. She is special. She's my whole world. Over the following weeks, Ruby became a regular visitor. On days when Mrs. Chen couldn't watch her, Mary would bring her to the hospital. Ruby would sit with Silas, doing homework at the small table in his room or drawing pictures while her mother worked. She talked to him about everything. School drama, her favorite TV shows, the stray cat she wanted to adopt but they couldn't afford. She showed him her math homework, and Silas helped her when she got stuck, using his eye-tracking computer to guide her through problems. You're really good at math, Ruby observed one day. Were you a teacher? No. Businessman. What kind of business? Buildings. Properties. Like a builder? Did you build houses? Bought and sold them. Ruby thought about this. Did you help people find homes? Silas had never thought of it that way. He'd always focused on profits, not the people who lived in his properties. Tried to. That's good. Everyone needs a home. Mama says we're lucky to have our apartment, even though it's small. Some people don't have homes at all. That makes me sad. Me too. If I had a lot of money, I'd buy homes for people who don't have them. Would you? The question was innocent, but it struck deep. Would he? The old Silas, the one before the accident, would have said it wasn't good business. But now, looking at Ruby's earnest face, he found himself typing, yes. Would help people. Good. Because helping people is the most important thing. That's what my daddy used to say. He said we're all connected, and when you help someone, it makes the whole world better. Your daddy was right. Ruby smiled. I miss him a lot. But Mama says he's still with us in our hearts. Do you believe that? Silas had never been religious or particularly spiritual. But watching Ruby's hopeful face, he found himself typing, yes. I believe that. One afternoon, Ruby brought a piece of paper and crayons to Silas's room. She settled at the table and began drawing with intense concentration. What are you making? Mary asked. A surprise. It's a secret. She worked for 30 minutes, tongue poking out slightly as she focused. Finally, she held up the paper triumphantly. It's for Mr. Hayes. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands. On the left was a woman in a blue dress with dark skin and a big smile. In the middle was a small girl in a red dress with braids. On the right was a man in a bed with lots of equipment around him. Above them, Ruby had drawn a sun with a smiley face. At the bottom, in careful but uneven letters, she'd written, My friends. Do you like it? Ruby asked Silas anxiously. Silas couldn't type fast enough. Love it. Most beautiful picture I've ever seen. Ruby carefully walked over and placed it on the small table beside his bed where he could see it. Now you won't be lonely. You can look at this and remember we're your friends. Mary's eyes filled with tears. That's so sweet, baby. It's true, Mama. We are friends. Friends take care of each other. After they left that evening, Silas stared at the drawing. 3 figures holding hands. A child's simple representation of connection, of belonging, of family. He'd spent 52 years building an empire. But in that moment he would have traded every property, every dollar, every business achievement for what Ruby had drawn. People who cared about him just because he existed. For the first time since the accident, Silas Hayes understood what he'd been missing his entire life. Life developed a rhythm over the next few weeks. Angela continued Silas's physical therapy, celebrating each small victory. He could now move 4 fingers on his right hand, his left thumb, and both feet slightly. Dr. Mitchell was cautiously optimistic, though she warned that full recovery was unlikely. The longer you're locked in, the harder it is to rewire those neural pathways, she explained. But you're showing more progress than most patients. The therapy is working and your determination is remarkable. Silas typed, have reasons to fight. Yes you do. Mary and Ruby, right? They're good for you. Best medicine I've had. Dr. Mitchell smiled. Sometimes the best medicine isn't what we prescribe. Mary continued her daily visits, now bringing Ruby 3 or 4 times a week. Ruby had taken to bringing her homework, spreading it out on the table in Silas's room while Mary worked. She'd chat with him about her assignments, her friends, her dreams. Mrs. Rodriguez says I'm the best reader in the class, Ruby announced proudly one Tuesday. She let me pick the book for story time tomorrow. What will you pick? Silas typed. A story about a girl who saves a magical horse. It's my favorite. Do you like horses? Never thought about it. They're beautiful. And strong. Like Mama. Mama is strong like a horse. Not that she looks like a horse, Ruby added quickly. That would be mean. I mean she's strong inside. Silas glanced at Mary who was organizing his water pitcher and cups. She did look strong but also tired. He'd noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way she sometimes winced when she thought no one was watching. Mary, are you okay? He typed after Ruby went to use the bathroom. I'm fine. Just tired. Working 2 jobs catches up with you sometimes. 2 jobs is too much. It's what I need to do. Ruby's school costs are rent bills. They don't pay themselves. Wish I could help. Mary squeezed his hand gently. You already do. You give me someone to talk to. You listen to Ruby. That's worth more than money. But Silas didn't agree. He had money. Lots of it. Money that was sitting in accounts while Mary worked herself to exhaustion. Money that his business partners were trying to steal while a single mother struggled to pay rent. The injustice of it burned in him. That Friday everything changed. Dr. Patterson entered Silas's room at 9 a.m. with a folder and a serious expression. Behind him walked a woman Silas didn't recognize, wearing an administrator's badge. Mr. Hayes, Dr. Patterson began, this is Linda Martinez from Hospital Administration. We need to discuss your long-term care plan. Linda stepped forward with a practiced smile. Hello, Mr. Hayes. I understand you're communicating now, which is wonderful. However, the hospital needs to make some decisions about your continued care. Silas felt dread pooling in his stomach. What decisions? County Memorial is an acute care facility. We're not equipped for long-term rehabilitation patients. You've been here for 7 weeks. Insurance is pressuring us to move you to a more appropriate setting. Where? Linda consulted her folder. We've identified a facility in Riverside, about 200 miles from here. Riverside Extended Care specializes in locked-in syndrome and severe neurological conditions. They have excellent therapists and all the equipment you need. 200 miles? Yes. I know it's far, but they have space available, and your insurance has approved the transfer. Your cousin has already signed the consent forms. Of course Diane had signed. She didn't care where he went as long as she got her money. When? Next Friday. 1 week from today. We'll arrange medical transport, and all your records will be transferred. The staff at Riverside will continue your therapy. After they left, Silas lay in his bed, panic rising. Riverside was 200 miles away. Mary would never be able to visit. He'd lose his only connection to the outside world, his only friends, his only hope. He'd be alone again. When Mary arrived at 2 p.m., she found him agitated. His heart rate monitor was beeping faster than usual, and his face showed clear distress. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Silas typed out the whole story, the transfer, Riverside, Diane signing 1 week. Mary's face went pale. No. They can't do that. They can't. They are. But you need people you know. You need consistency. Starting over in a new place with new staff. I'll be alone. Mary sat down heavily in her chair. There has to be something we can do. Can we fight it? Talk to the doctors? Insurance decision. Cousin already signed. Then we get a lawyer. No time. No money for legal battle. They sat in silence, the weight of the situation settling over them. Finally, Mary spoke quietly. I'll visit. I promise. 200 miles isn't that far. I'll drive up on my days off. Silas typed slowly, you work 7 days a week. Can't afford gas for 400-mile round trip. I'll figure something out. I'm not abandoning you, Mr. Hayes. You're my friend. You have Ruby. Can't neglect her for me. Tears slipped down Mary's cheeks. This isn't fair. You're finally making progress, finally connecting with people, and they're taking that away. Life isn't fair. You know that. I know. But it should be. Just once it should be. Over the next few days, Mary tried everything she could think of. She talked to Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Patterson, and hospital administration. She explained that Silas had support here, that moving him could harm his recovery, that he needed familiar faces. But insurance companies didn't care about emotional bonds. They cared about costs and bed availability and efficiency metrics. By Wednesday, Mary had exhausted all options. She sat in Silas's room with Ruby, all three of them subdued. Are you really leaving? Ruby asked Silas, her voice small. Have to. Not my choice. But who will help you? Who will talk to you? New doctors. New nurses. But they won't know you like we do. They won't know you like Blue, or that you're really good at math, or that you think Tommy eating paste is annoying. Despite everything, Silas almost smiled. True. Ruby climbed out of her chair and walked to his bedside. She looked at him seriously, far too serious for a 7-year-old. I'll miss you, Mr. Hayes. You're my best grown-up friend except for Mama. I'll miss you too. Keep drawing. Keep being smart and kind. I will. Promise. She paused, then added, Can I tell you a secret? Yes. Ruby leaned closer and whispered, though there was no one else in the room to hear. Sometimes when I'm sad about Daddy, I pretend I have another daddy who's watching over me. When you came here, I pretended you were like that. Like someone who cares about me even though you're not my real daddy. Is that weird? Silas's eyes filled with tears. He typed carefully, Not weird. I care about you very much. You're special, Ruby. You're special too. She carefully took his hand, holding it in both of hers. Will you remember me when you're far away? Always. We'll never forget you or your mama. On Thursday, Silas had visitors he didn't want, Frank and Todd. They came bearing more false sympathy and hidden agendas. Sorry to hear about the transfer, Frank said. Riverside is supposed to be good though. Top-notch facility. You'll get excellent care there, Todd added. Better than here, really? Silas typed, We'll miss this place. Sure. But sometimes change is good. Speaking of change, we wanted to update you on the company. The board approved our temporary leadership role. Everything's running smoothly. Don't worry about a thing. Thank you for taking care of it. What else could he say? He was being shipped 200 miles away, losing his only support system, and his business partners were stealing his company. He had no leverage, no power, no options. We'll visit you in Riverside when things settle down, Frank promised, though they both knew he wouldn't. After they left, Silas stared at Ruby's drawing still taped beside his bed. 3 figures holding hands. Friends. Family. Everything he'd never had and was about to lose. That evening, Mary came for what she thought would be her last visit before the transfer. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. I'm not ready to say goodbye, she said simply. Me neither. You changed my life, Mr. Hayes. You gave me purpose when I was just going through the motions. Ruby loves you. She paused, searching for words. I care about you. A lot. Losing you feels like losing Jerome all over again. Silas began typing, but Mary stopped him. Wait. Let me finish. I need to tell you something. She took a deep breath. When Jerome died, I was angry at God, at the world, at everything. I went through the motions for Ruby, but inside I was empty. Then I started working here, and most days were just about surviving. Paying bills, raising Ruby, getting through. I wasn't living. I was existing. Mary looked directly at Silas. Then I met you. And suddenly I had a reason to care again. Helping you, seeing your progress, watching you connect with Ruby, it reminded me what matters. You did that for me. You saved me just as much as I saved you. Silas typed through his tears. You saved more. Gave me life when I had none. Then we saved each other. Yes. Mary reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Ruby made you something. She wanted you to have it before you left. She unfolded it to reveal another drawing. This one showed Silas in a bed, but he was smiling. Around him were hearts and flowers and a big sun. At the top, Ruby had written, Get better soon, Mr. Hayes. Love, Ruby. She spelled your name wrong, Mary said with a wet laugh. But the sentiment is right. It's perfect. She loves you. I hope you know that. In her way, she thinks of you as family. I think of her as family too. And you. They sat together until visiting hours ended, not talking much, just being present. When Mary finally had to leave, she squeezed Silas's hand one last time. Thank you for being you, Silas Hayes. Thank you for letting us in. After she left, Silas lay in the dark room and faced a hard truth. He couldn't let them go. Mary and Ruby had given him something precious, something he'd never valued until now. They'd given him love. And somehow he had to find a way to keep it. Friday morning arrived too quickly. Silas had barely slept, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. The medical transport was scheduled for 2 p.m. Mary's shift ended at 1 p.m. He'd have 30 minutes to say goodbye, and then she'd be gone from his life. He'd lived 52 years without Mary and Ruby, but now the thought of losing them felt like dying all over again. Dr. Mitchell came by at 8 a.m. for a final check. "You're making good progress, Mr. Hayes. The team at Riverside will continue your therapy. They're really excellent." "Don't want to go," Silas typed bluntly. "I understand. But your insurance won't cover continued acute care here. I've fought as hard as I can, but the decision is final. We'll lose Mary and Ruby." Dr. Mitchell's expression softened. "I know. They've been good for you. But sometimes we can't control circumstances. We just have to adapt." After she left, Silas lay still, staring at the ceiling. Adapt. That's what everyone said. Just accept that life was unfair and move on. But he'd spent 3 weeks listening to people plot against him, unable to respond. He'd spent years building relationships based on money instead of genuine connection. He'd lived half a century in isolation. He was done adapting to a life that didn't honor what mattered. The morning passed slowly. Nurses came and went, preparing him for transfer. They packed his few belongings, disconnected non-essential equipment, updated his charts. Everyone was efficient and professional, treating the transfer as routine. Only Silas knew it was catastrophic. At 12:30 p.m., Mary appeared in the doorway. She wasn't supposed to come this early, but she'd taken an early break. She wore her custodial uniform, the blue shirt with the hospital logo, and carried a small package wrapped in red paper. "I couldn't wait until 1 o'clock, she said simply. "I needed more time with you." She pulled her chair close to his bed and sat down. "Ruby wanted to come say goodbye, but she's at school. She made you this, though." Mary handed him the package, then realized he couldn't open it. She carefully unwrapped it for him, revealing a framed version of Ruby's drawing. The one with 3 figures holding hands. Ruby had added more details: flowers around their feet, birds in the sky, a rainbow in the corner. "She spent 3 evenings on this," Mary said. "She wanted it to be perfect. She said you needed something to remember us by." Silas stared at the drawing through blurry vision. "We'll never forget." "I know. But Riverside is far. Life gets busy. People forget. Not these people. Not you too." Mary smiled sadly. "We won't forget you either. You've become part of our family. Part of our story." She pulled out her phone and showed him photos. Ruby at school, Ruby doing homework, Ruby playing at the park. In several photos, Ruby was holding up drawings she'd made for Mr. Hayes. "She talks about you every day," Mary said. "She tells her friends about you, her teacher, anyone who will listen. She's proud of you, proud of your progress. She believes you'll walk again someday. Hope she's right." "Me too." Mary put her phone away and took Silas's hand. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it completely before you respond." Silas managed the tiniest nod, a movement that had taken weeks to master. "When Jerome died, part of me died too. The part that believed in goodness, in fairness, in hope. I kept going for Ruby, but inside I was hollow. Every day was just about surviving until the next day. I smiled when I needed to, laughed when Ruby needed me to, but it was all hollow." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Then I walked into your room. And you were trapped, suffering, completely alone. And something in me woke up. Because here was someone who needed help, really needed it, and I could actually do something. For the first time since Jerome died, I had purpose." Tears slipped down Mary's cheeks. "Helping you, talking to you, watching you improve, it reminded me why life matters. You gave me back my hopes, Silas. You saved me from drowning in grief. And I need you to know that." She leaned closer. "So even though you're leaving, even though Riverside is far away, you've already changed my life. You've made me better. Ruby's happier because I'm happier. We're both better because we knew you." Silas tried to type, but his vision was too blurred with tears. Mary wiped his eyes gently with a tissue. "I know you want to respond, but just listen for a moment. I believe you're going to recover. I believe you'll walk again, talk again, live again. And when you do, I hope you remember us. I hope you remember that you matter to people. That you're loved." The word hit Silas like a physical blow. Love. She'd said it so casually, but it echoed in his mind. When was the last time someone had told him they loved him? His parents, maybe decades ago. But since then? Nothing. No one. I need to go, Mary said, her voice breaking. They'll be here for transport soon and I can't watch them take you away. I'm not strong enough for that. She stood, still holding his hand. Thank you for everything, Silas. Thank you for listening to my stories. Thank you for being kind to Ruby. Thank you for letting us matter to you. She leaned down and kissed his forehead gently. Goodbye, friend. Then she turned to leave. And something inside Silas broke. He couldn't let her go. He couldn't go back to being alone. He couldn't lose the only people who'd ever truly seen him as human. He focused every particle of his being on his right hand. The hand Mary had held so many times. The hand that had managed small twitches and movements. He thought about Ruby's drawing, about Mary's tears, about Jerome's wisdom that rich meant having people who loved you. Move. His index finger twitched. Then his middle finger. Then, with effort that felt like lifting a mountain, his entire hand shifted. He managed to grab Mary's wrist. Mary gasped and spun around. Silas. He couldn't let go. His grip was weak, but it was there. He was holding her. Oh my God. Silas, you're moving. You're really moving. She pressed the call button repeatedly. Nurse. I need a nurse now. Patricia Chin rushed in within seconds. What's wrong? Look at his hand. Silas was still gripping Mary's wrist. Patricia's eyes went wide. Mr. Hayes, can you squeeze? He squeezed with everything he had. Again, Patricia demanded. Another squeeze. I'm getting Dr. Mitchell. Patricia ran from the room. Mary sank back into her chair, laughing and crying simultaneously. You're moving. You're really moving. Oh, why now? Silas managed to release her wrist long enough to type. Couldn't let you go. What? Had to show you. Can't lose you and Ruby. You're my family. More tears streamed down Mary's face. We're your family? Yes. Only family I have. Only family I want. Dr. Mitchell burst into the room with Patricia and Dr. Patterson. Show me, she demanded. Over the next hour they ran tests. Silas could now move his entire right hand, his left hand partially, both feet, and could turn his head slightly. Movement that had seemed impossible that morning was suddenly real. This is extraordinary, Dr. Mitchell said. The biggest breakthrough we've seen. What changed? Motivation, Silas typed. Dr. Patterson called the transport service and canceled. Then he called Diane to inform her of the development. When he got off the phone he looked frustrated. Your cousin is upset about the canceled transfer. She says the decision was already made. Tell her I'm staying here. I already did. She's not happy, but with your improved condition, she doesn't have grounds to force the transfer. After the doctors left, Mary remained in her chair, holding Silas's hand. The hand that had gripped her wrist. The hand that had kept her from leaving. You did that for us? She asked quietly. Did it for me. You and Ruby are my reason to fight. My reason to live. We love you too, Silas. Ruby and I both. We didn't want to lose you either. Silas typed slowly, carefully. Then don't. Stay in my life. Let me stay in yours. Always. For as long as you want. Always. They sat together for another hour, just holding hands, both understanding that something fundamental had shifted. Silas had been a successful businessman who'd lost everything. Now he was a recovering patient who'd found what really mattered. When Mary finally had to return to work, she promised to bring Ruby that evening. She's going to flip out when she hears you moved your hand. She's been praying for that every night. After she left, Silas stared at his right hand. He opened and closed his fingers slowly, marveling at the movement. It wasn't much. He still couldn't walk, couldn't sit up, couldn't do most things people took for granted. But he could hold hands. He could grip Mary's wrist. He could show physically what he'd learned to feel emotionally. That connection mattered more than anything else. That evening, Ruby rushed into his room with Mary close behind. Mama says you can move your hand now. Can I see? Can I see? Silas held up his right hand and waved at her. Ruby's eyes went huge and then she started jumping up and down. You did it? You really did it? I told Mama you would get better. I told her. She carefully took his hand in both of hers. This is the best day ever. You're going to get all better now. I just know it. Working on it, Silas typed with his other hand, having learned to use both hands independently now. Good. Because we need you here. You're part of our family, remember? Like my drawing shows. Mary picked up the framed drawing from the table and held it where Silas could see it clearly. 3 figures holding hands. That's us, Ruby said firmly. That's our family. Right, Mr. Hayes? Silas looked at Ruby's earnest face, at Mary's hopeful expression. at the drawing depicting a bond he'd never known he needed. He thought about his business partner stealing his company, his cousin hoping he'd die, the decades he'd spent accumulating wealth while starving for connection. And he knew exactly what to say. Right. That's our family. The next 3 weeks brought rapid improvements. Whatever had unlocked in Silas's brain when he'd gripped Mary's wrist seemed to have opened floodgates. His movement increased daily. By the end of the first week, he could move both arms fully, though they were weak and uncoordinated. By the second week, he could partially sit up with assistance. By the third week, he could grip objects, feed himself with help, and turn pages in a book. Dr. Mitchell was astounded. This isn't typical progression. Most locked-in patients who recover do so gradually over years, if at all. You're recovering in weeks. Determined, Silas typed, though his hand movements were still easier than speaking. His vocal cords remained paralyzed, a frustrating barrier, but progress nonetheless. Angela, his physical therapist, increased his sessions to 4 times daily. She worked his muscles, taught him coordination exercises, celebrated each milestone. When he managed to lift a cup of water to his mouth, she actually cheered. 2 months ago you couldn't move a finger, she said. Now you're drinking on your own. That's incredible, Mr. Hayes. Mary and Ruby visited every day. Ruby brought schoolwork, drawings, and endless stories. She'd appointed herself Silas's personal cheerleader, encouraging every movement, every effort, every small victory. Try to touch your nose, she'd say, demonstrating. Like this. You can do it. Silas would attempt the motion, his hands shaking and uncoordinated. Sometimes he'd miss by inches. But Ruby never showed disappointment. Almost. Try again. You're getting better every day. Her faith was absolute, unshakable. She believed he would fully recover because in her 7-year-old worldview, good people who tried hard always won in the end. Silas wished the adult world worked that way. Mary brought him books to read now that he could turn pages. She'd sit beside his bed during her breaks, both of them reading in comfortable silence. Sometimes she'd share passages from her book, or he'd type out something interesting from his. Listen to this, Mary said one afternoon, reading from a novel. True wealth isn't measured in gold but in the people who stand beside you when gold runs out. She looked at Silas. Jerome used to say something similar. Funny how different people come to the same truths. Smart people, Silas typed. Or people who learned hard lessons. Both. 3 weeks after his breakthrough, Dr. Mitchell brought news. I've consulted with the neurology team. Your recovery is progressing beyond anything we expected. We think you might regain speech with intensive therapy. It won't be quick or easy, but there's potential. Hope surged through Silas. To speak again. To tell Mary and Ruby in his own voice how much they meant to him. Start now, he typed. Absolutely. I'm bringing in our best speech therapist, Catherine Williams. She's worked with locked-in patients before. Catherine arrived the next day, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. She spent an hour assessing Silas's capabilities. Your vocal cords aren't permanently damaged, she concluded. The neural pathways are disrupted, but with work we can potentially rebuild them. It will take months of daily practice. We'll do whatever it takes. Good. Because it's going to be frustrating. You'll make sounds before you make words. You'll struggle with things toddlers do easily. But if you're committed, we'll get there. They started immediately. For the first week, Silas couldn't produce any intentional sounds. His throat made random noises, grunts and groans he couldn't control. It was humiliating. But Ruby didn't care. You made a sound, she'd exclaim each time. That's progress. Keep going. By the second week, he managed a single syllable, ah. Ruby jumped up and down. You did it. You made a word sound. Do it again. Ah. Yes. This is the best thing ever. Mary hugged him carefully, mindful of his still fragile condition. I'm so proud of you, Silas. So incredibly proud. Her words meant more than any business award ever had. During the 4th week of his accelerated recovery, Silas had unexpected visitors. Frank and Todd returned, clearly alarmed by reports of his improvement. They found him sitting partially upright in bed, working on a tablet that Angela had set up for him. His movements were still slow and shaky, but he was functional. Silas, Frank said, his false smile strained. This is amazing. We heard you were improving, but this is beyond what anyone expected. Better every day, Silas typed on his tablet. That's wonderful. Really wonderful. So, have the doctor said when you might be able to return to work? The company misses your leadership. Silas studied his former business partners. He'd been planning this conversation for weeks, waiting until he could communicate more effectively. Heard you, he typed slowly. In the beginning. Heard everything you said. Frank's face paled. What do you mean? Heard you planning to steal my company. Heard every word. Todd stepped forward. Now, Silas, you were unconscious. Whatever you think you heard. Not unconscious. Locked in. Aware of everything. He paused, then typed more. You said no one cared about me. That I never cared about anyone. You were planning to move assets offshore. To have me declared incompetent. Frank and Todd exchanged panicked glances. That's crazy talk, Frank said. The accident obviously affected your memory. We never said anything like that. Silas had expected this. He typed carefully, Tuesday, March 15th, 11:30 a.m. You said, if we wait another month, we can have him declared incompetent. Then we move the company offshore. Todd asked about my family. You said, his cousin doesn't care. She just wants the insurance payout. No one really cares about Silas. He never cared about anyone else. The color drained completely from Frank's face. That's. Todd started but couldn't finish. Then on April 2nd, you discussed offering Diane $2 million for shares worth $40 million. Called it brilliant. Frank recovered slightly. Even if you heard something, you can't prove anything. It's your word against ours. And you've been through trauma. Any lawyer would argue your memories are unreliable. True, Silas typed. Can't prove it. But don't need to. What does that mean? Means I'm taking back my company. Calling board meeting. Removing you both. You can leave quietly or we can make it public. Your choice. You can't do that, Todd said. We have contracts. Rights. Read your contracts. I can terminate for cause. Attempting to steal company assets is cause. But you can't prove. Don't need to prove in court. Just need to convince board. And I've had weeks to plan what I'll say. How I'll explain your behavior. Your visits. Your eagerness to move me to Riverside. The board will believe me. It was a bluff mostly. Silas didn't know if he could win a board fight in his current condition. But Frank and Todd didn't know that. This is insane, Frank said. After everything we've done for the company? You mean after everything you tried to steal? Leave now. I'll have lawyers contact you with buyout terms. Take the offer or fight me. Your choice. Frank and Todd left without another word. Silas knew it wasn't over. They'd fight back, hire lawyers, try to discredit him. But he'd drawn a line. He was done being a victim. When Mary arrived that afternoon, Silas told her everything. She listened with growing anger. Those men are horrible. After everything you built, they just tried to take it. Happens all the time in business. Usually to people who can't fight back. But you can fight back now. Yes, because of you. You gave me reason to come back. Mary squeezed his hand. We'll help you however we can. I don't know much about business, but I know about fighting for what's right. Don't need business help. Need what you already give. Friendship. Purpose. You have that. Always. That evening, Ruby arrived with a new drawing. This one showed Silas standing up, holding hands with her and Mary. Above them, she'd written, "When Mr. Hayes gets better." I drew the future, Ruby explained. Because you're going to walk again. The doctors don't know for sure, but I do. You're going to walk and we're going to hold hands for real, not just in bed. Silas took the drawing with shaking hands. We'll try. For you. Not just for me. For you too. You need to get better so you can do all the things you want to do. What do I want to do? Ruby thought seriously. I don't know. What do you want to do? Silas considered the question. 2 months ago he would have said grow the company, make more money, acquire more properties. But now. He typed slowly, help people. Like your mama helps people. Like you help me. That's a good thing to want, Ruby said approvingly. Helping is the best thing. After they left, Silas stared at Ruby's drawing. The future. A future where he stood on his own feet, where he could walk beside the people he loved. It seemed impossible. But 2 months ago, moving a finger had seemed impossible. Speaking had seemed impossible. Caring about anyone had seemed impossible. Now all of those things were happening. Maybe Ruby was right. Maybe the future she'd drawn was possible too. 6 weeks after gripping Mary's wrist, Silas could sit up unassisted. 7 weeks in, he could stand for brief periods with a walker. 8 weeks brought his first shaky steps, Angela holding his arm while he shuffled forward. 3 steps, she counted. That's 3 more than yesterday. His speech was returning too. He could form simple words now, though his voice was rough and weak from months of disuse. Good, he'd managed to say when Catherine praised his progress. The word had come out slurred, but it was recognizable. Ruby had cried happy tears. I heard you talk. You really talked. Yes, Silas had replied, the single syllable taking enormous effort. But the hardest work wasn't physical. It was legal and financial. Silas had called his personal lawyer, Gerald Matthews, the same day he'd confronted Frank and Todd. Gerald had been with him for 15 years and was one of the few people Silas trusted completely. Gerald, Silas had typed during their first call, his speech not yet recovered enough for phone conversations. Need you here. Important. Gerald had arrived within hours. After hearing the full story, he'd gotten to work immediately. Frank and Todd are going to fight, Gerald warned. They've already hired Bennett and Associates. They're claiming you're not mentally competent to make business decisions. Expected that. We'll need medical evaluations proving your cognitive function is intact. Dr. Mitchell already provided preliminary reports, but we'll need comprehensive testing. Whatever it takes. Over the next 2 weeks, Silas underwent batteries of cognitive tests. Memory, reasoning, decision-making, emotional regulation. Every aspect of his mental function was examined and documented. The results were unequivocal. Silas Hayes was fully competent. Your cognitive function is actually above average, the psychologist reported. The locked-in syndrome affected motor function, not mental capacity. You're sharp as ever. Armed with medical evidence, Gerald moved forward. He called a board meeting for Morrison Weber Hayes Properties, carefully timing it for when Silas would be strong enough to attend via video conference. The meeting was scheduled for May 15th, 3 months after Silas's accident. Mary helped him prepare. She brought a nice shirt from his apartment, helped him practice sitting upright for extended periods, and listened as he rehearsed what he needed to say. You're going to do great, she assured him. Just tell the truth. Let them see you're still you. The day of the meeting, Angela and Catherine helped position Silas in a comfortable chair with good lighting. Gerald set up the video conference in his hospital room, angling the camera to show Silas clearly. At 2 p.m. the board meeting began. The screen showed 12 faces, the board members of Morrison Weber Hayes Properties. Some Silas knew well, others he'd only met a few times. Frank and Todd sat at the table, confident expressions on their faces. Gerald spoke first. Thank you all for attending. As you know, Mr. Hayes has requested this meeting to address his role in the company moving forward. Mr. Hayes, would you like to begin? Silas cleared his throat. His speech had improved significantly, but long sentences were still challenging. He decided to type the complex parts and speak only the most important phrases. He began with typed words. Thank you for coming. As you can see, I am recovering from my accident. My mind is clear. My cognitive function is intact. I have medical documentation to prove this. Then he spoke slowly but clearly. I heard everything. The board members leaned forward. Silas continued typing. During my locked-in state, I was fully conscious. I heard conversations, including conversations about my company, about moving assets, about having me declared incompetent, about taking advantage of my condition. Frank interrupted. These are serious accusations with no basis in fact. Silas has been through trauma. His memories are unreliable. Let me finish, Silas typed then spoke. Not accusations. Facts. He'd prepared meticulously for this moment. With Gerald's help, he documented dates, times, and specific conversations. He couldn't prove what was said, but he could create a narrative that explained suspicious behavior. Why did Frank and Todd visit me only twice in the first 6 weeks after my accident? Why did they encourage my transfer to a facility 200 miles away? Why did they immediately file for temporary leadership instead of waiting to see if I would recover? He paused, letting the questions sink in, then continued, because they wanted me out of the way. They saw my accident as an opportunity, not a tragedy. That's ridiculous, Todd said. We were trying to keep the company running during a crisis. Silas spoke again, his voice stronger. Then why push transfer? Why not wait? Board member Janet Rodriguez spoke up. That's a fair question. The urgency to move you seemed unusual at the time. Another board member, Michael Kim, added, and the timing of the leadership papers. They were filed within 2 weeks of your accident, before doctors had established a long-term prognosis. Frank's confident expression faltered slightly. Gerald took over. Mr. Hayes isn't asking for immediate action. He's simply requesting that the board carefully review the temporary leadership arrangement. He's providing evidence of his competence and requesting to be restored to his position as CEO. He can't even walk, Todd protested. How can he run a company? Roosevelt couldn't walk, Silas typed. Still led a nation. Several board members smiled at that. Modern technology allows remote work, Gerald added. Mr. Hayes can communicate effectively via computer and his speech is improving daily. He's fully capable of making strategic decisions. The debate continued for 2 hours. Frank and Todd fought hard, arguing that Silas wasn't ready, that the company needed stable leadership, that change now would be disruptive. But the medical evidence was clear. And the board members, many of whom had known Silas for years, could see he was himself again. Finally, Janet called for a vote. All in favor of restoring Silas Hayes to his position as CEO, with Frank Morrison and Todd Weber returning to their previous roles as partners? 8 hands went up. Only Frank, Todd, and 2 board members who'd always been allied with them voted against. Motion passes, Janet declared. Silas, welcome back. Silas felt relief wash over him. He typed, "Thank you for your trust. I won't disappoint you." After the meeting ended, Gerald grinned. "You did it. The company is yours again." But Silas felt hollow victory. He'd won back his business, but so what? The company had never made him happy. It had never given him purpose or meaning. Mary and Ruby had done that, which gave him an idea. Over the next week, as he continued physical therapy and speech practice, Silas worked with Gerald on a new project. Something that mattered more than commercial real estate ever had. He called Mary into his room one afternoon and asked her to sit down. "I have idea," he said, his speech clear enough now for simple sentences. "Need your input." "What kind of idea?" He pulled up documents on his tablet, turning it so Mary could see. "Starting foundation. 4 families." Mary read the proposal, her eyes widening. "The Johnson Foundation? Named after you and Ruby. After Jerome." The foundation's mission was simple: provide financial support and resources to families caring for loved ones with serious illnesses or disabilities. It would cover expenses that insurance didn't. Transportation to hospitals, childcare during treatments, loss of income when someone had to stop working to provide care. This is... Mary couldn't find words. What you needed when Jerome died. What you need now, working 2 jobs. Silas, this is incredible. But why name it after us? Because you saved me. Because Jerome's wisdom changed me. Because Ruby showed me what matters. Tears streamed down Mary's face. "I don't know what to say." "Say, you'll help. Need someone who understands. Someone with heart." "Help how?" Silas pulled up another document, a job offer. Director of the Johnson Foundation, with a salary 3 times what Mary made at both her current jobs combined. "Want you to run it." Mary stared at the offer. "Silas, I can't. I'm not qualified. I clean hospitals. I don't run foundations." "You care. You understand. Can learn everything else." "But..." "Please," Silas said. It came out clearly, the single word carrying all his hope. "Need you. Foundation needs you." Mary read through the job description. The salary would mean she could quit both current jobs. She could spend more time with Ruby. She could afford better housing, better schools, a better life. But more than that, she could help people. People like her who'd lost someone they loved and were struggling to survive. "If I do this," Mary said slowly, "I do it right. I learn everything. I work hard. I don't want this to be charity." "Not charity. You earned this. You saved my life. Now help me save others." Mary looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. "Okay. Yes. I'll do it. Thank you." She hugged him carefully, mindful of his still recovering body. "Thank you for seeing me as capable of this. Always knew you were capable. Just took time for you to see it too." That evening, when Ruby arrived, Mary told her the news. Ruby's reaction was exactly what Silas expected. "Mama's going to run a whole foundation? That's so cool. And it's named after us? After Daddy?" "Yes, baby. Mr. Hayes wanted to honor your daddy's memory by helping other families." Ruby turned to Silas with serious eyes. "Thank you for remembering my daddy. And for helping Mama. You're the best, Mr. Hayes." "Call me Silas," he said. He'd been practicing saying his name, wanting Ruby to use it. Friends use first names. "Okay, Silas." Ruby tested the name, then grinned. "I like it. Silas is a good name." Over the next month, Silas and Mary worked together to establish the foundation. Gerald handled the legal aspects while Silas provided funding. Mary researched best practices, connected with other charitable organizations, and began building a network of support. Dr. Mitchell agreed to serve on the medical advisory board. Angela joined as well, excited about helping families access good therapy. Even Catherine got involved, offering to train family members in communication techniques for locked-in patients. "This is going to help so many people," Dr. Mitchell said. "You're doing something really important, Silas." "Doing what?" "I should have done years ago. Helping people." By the end of June, 3 months after his breakthrough, Silas could walk with a cane. His speech was nearly normal, though he still slurred slightly when tired. His right hand had full function, his left was about 80%. He'd also moved out of the hospital into a rehabilitation facility where he could live somewhat independently while continuing therapy. The Johnson Foundation officially launched on July 1st with a small ceremony. Silas gave a speech, his voice strong and clear. "3 months ago I was trapped in my own body. I could hear everything but couldn't respond. I felt invisible, forgotten, abandoned. Then Mary Johnson walked into my room and saw me. Really saw me. She treated me like a person when everyone else saw a vegetable. She talked to me, read to me, brought her daughter to visit me. She gave me a reason to fight for recovery. This foundation exists because of what Mary taught me, that everyone deserves to be seen, to be valued, to be supported. It exists to help families like hers, families struggling to care for loved ones while holding their own lives together. It exists because kindness matters, because hope matters, because love matters. We can't prevent tragedy, but we can support people through it. That's what the Johnson Foundation will do." The local news covered the launch. The story gained traction. Billionaire nearly dies, experiences breakthrough, starts foundation to help others. It was a feel-good narrative that people shared widely. But for Silas, it wasn't about publicity. It was about purpose. He'd spent 52 years building wealth. Now he'd spend however much time he had left building something that actually mattered. By August, Silas had moved into an accessible apartment near the foundation's offices. He still used a cane and couldn't climb stairs easily, but he was functional. He could dress himself, cook simple meals, and live independently. The foundation was growing faster than anyone expected. Within the first month, they'd helped 20 families cover medical transportation costs, childcare expenses, and lost wages. Word spread quickly among social workers and hospital staff about this new resource. Mary was a natural at her new role. She met with every family personally, listened to their stories, and found creative ways to help them. She'd hired a small staff, an accountant, an administrator, and 2 case workers. But she insisted on staying connected to the people they served. "I was where they are," she told Silas. "I know what it feels like. I can't forget that." Ruby had started 3rd grade and loved telling her classmates about the foundation. She'd appointed herself the official foundation artist, creating drawings for their newsletters and website. "This one is of a family getting help," she'd explain, showing Silas her latest creation. "See, they're sad here, but then the foundation helps them and they're happy here." Her drawings were simplistic but powerful. They captured something essential about hope and human connection that professional graphics never quite managed. Silas spent his days split between foundation work and continued therapy. Angela had him on a strict exercise regimen. Catherine worked with him on vocal endurance. He was determined to keep improving. But the best parts of his days were the moments with Mary and Ruby. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Mary would often stop by his apartment after work, bringing dinner that she and Ruby had prepared. They'd eat together, talking about their days, making plans for the foundation, or simply enjoying comfortable silence. Ruby would do homework at Silas's kitchen table, asking for help with math problems or practicing spelling words. She claimed the 2nd bedroom as her office, where she worked on foundation drawings and her own art projects. "Is it okay if I leave some supplies here?" she'd asked. "Then I won't have to carry everything back and forth." "Of course," Silas had said. "This is your space too." On weekends they do things together. Go to the park, though Silas couldn't run around like Ruby wanted. Visit museums, where Silas could navigate with his cane. See movies, where sitting was easy and everyone was equal in the dark. It felt like family. Not the biological family Silas had grown up with, distant and cold and focused on achievement. But chosen family. People who cared about each other not from obligation but from genuine affection. One Saturday in September they were at the park. Ruby was on the swings while Mary and Silas sat on a nearby bench. "She talks about you all the time at school," Mary said. Her teacher mentioned it at parent-teacher conference. Apparently Ruby wrote a whole essay about my friend Silas and how you started a foundation after being paralyzed. What did the teacher say? That Ruby has a kind heart and sees the good in people. That she's empathetic beyond her years. Mary paused. She got that from Jerome. He was always seeing the best in everyone. You do that too. That's where she learned it. Maybe. I try. Mary watched Ruby swing higher. Can I ask you something personal? Anything. Do you ever regret it? The accident, the whole experience? I know it was horrible, but it also changed your life completely. Silas thought carefully before answering. The accident itself? Yes. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. The locked-in state was torture. But what came after? He gestured toward Ruby, toward Mary, toward the life he now had. No. I don't regret finding this. Even though you lost your mobility, your company for a while, months of your life? I didn't lose months of my life. I found life. For the first time. He turned to face Mary. Before the accident, I was successful but empty. I had money and properties and business achievements. But I was alone. I had no real connections, no purpose beyond accumulation. I was living but not alive. And now I know what matters. I have people I care about who care about me. I have work that helps others. I have Ruby's drawings on my refrigerator and your voice on my voicemail and reasons to wake up every morning beyond checking stock portfolios. Mary's eyes glistened. You changed our lives too. Ruby has stability now. I'm not exhausted all the time. We can afford things we never could before. But more than that, we have you. She thinks of you as family, you know. She told her teacher you're like an uncle. I think of her as family too. And you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Ruby play. She'd moved from the swings to the slide, waving at them each time she reached the top before sliding down with her arms up in the air. Jerome would have liked you, Mary said suddenly. He always said real strength wasn't about muscles or toughness. It was about getting back up after being knocked down. About caring even when it's hard. You've done that. I learned it from you. And from Ruby. From Jerome's wisdom that you shared. Maybe we all learned from each other. In October, the foundation held its first major fundraising event. Mary had organized it with help from the new staff. It was a simple dinner with speakers sharing their stories about how the foundation had helped them. Silas gave a speech about his journey. He talked about being locked in, about Mary's kindness, about Ruby's faith in him, about Jerome's philosophy that rich meant having people who loved you. I was a billionaire who felt poor, he said. Now I'm less wealthy on paper but richer in every way that counts. The event raised $200,000, far exceeding their goal. But more importantly, it connected them with other donors, volunteers, and families who needed help. One couple approached Silas afterward. The husband was in a wheelchair, recently paralyzed in an accident similar to Silas's. Your story gives me hope, the man said. 6 months ago I wanted to die. But hearing how you recovered, seeing what you've built, it makes me think recovery is possible. His wife added, tears in her eyes, and the foundation helped us when we had no one else. You paid for childcare so I could work. You covered transportation to his therapy appointments. We wouldn't have made it without you. Silas felt something he'd never experienced in 30 years of business. True satisfaction. Not the empty achievement of closing a deal, but the deep fulfillment of making a real difference. That night, after the event, Mary, Ruby, and Silas went back to his apartment. Ruby was exhausted and fell asleep on the couch while Mary and Silas talked in the kitchen. Today was perfect, Mary said. Everything we hoped for and more. Couldn't have done it without you. You made this real. We made it real. Together. She looked toward the living room where Ruby slept. She's going to be out for the night. I should get her home. Stay, Silas said impulsively. Both of you. The guest room is ready. No point driving home this late when you'll just be back here for brunch tomorrow anyway. Mary hesitated, then smiled. Okay. But only if you let me make breakfast. You need someone to make sure you eat more than toast and coffee. Deal. They carried Ruby to the guest room, tucking her in without waking her. Mary looked around the room, which had slowly accumulated Ruby's things. Art supplies, books, a stuffed animal she'd left behind. This feels like home, Mary said quietly. Is that weird? No. Feels like home to me too. Over the following weeks, they spent more and more time at Silas's apartment. Mary and Ruby would come over after work and school. They'd have dinner together, do homework, watch movies, just exist in each other's company. Ruby's office filled with more supplies. Mary started leaving work clothes in the guest room closet. Slowly, organically, without any formal discussion, they were becoming a household. In November, Silas asked Mary to sit down for a serious conversation. "I want to make something official," he said. "Something I should have done months ago." Mary looked nervous. "What's that?" "I want to set up a trust for Ruby. For her education, her future. She shouldn't have to worry about college costs or being able to follow her dreams." "Silas, you don't have to." "I want to. She's family. Family takes care of each other." Mary wiped tears from her eyes. "That's incredibly generous. But I need you to understand something. Ruby and we don't care about your money. We loved you when we thought you'd never recover. We'd love you if you lost everything tomorrow. The money, the foundation, all of it, that's wonderful. But it's not why we're here." "I know. That's why I want to do this. Because you don't want it. Because you care about me for me. Always have. Always will." The trust was established the following week. Enough to cover Ruby's entire education, undergraduate through professional school if she chose, plus a nest egg for her future. When Mary told Ruby, the little girl was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Does this mean Silas really is family? Like officially?" "He's always been family, baby. This just makes it more formal." "Good. Because I want him to be my family forever." That Thanksgiving they spent the holiday together. Mary cooked, Silas helped where he could with his still recovering motor skills, and Ruby set the table with elaborate care. They said grace before the meal. Ruby had insisted. "Thank you for this food," Ruby said, holding hands with Mary and Silas around the table. "Thank you for Mama and Silas. Thank you for the foundation helping people. Thank you for Daddy watching over us from heaven. And thank you that Silas got better and came into our lives. Amen." "Amen," Mary and Silas echoed. As they ate, Silas looked around the table at his chosen family. Mary, who'd seen him when he was invisible. Ruby, who'd believed in him when belief seemed foolish. Jerome's wisdom, present in every decision they made. He'd lost 3 months of his life to paralysis. But in losing that, he'd found everything that actually mattered. Christmas approached quickly. The foundation was thriving, having helped over 100 families in its first 6 months. Mary had expanded the staff and was developing programs for different types of family crises. Silas continued improving. He could walk without a cane for short distances, though he still used it for stability. His speech was nearly perfect. His hand coordination was at about 90%. Dr. Mitchell said he'd likely never fully recover, but he'd come far beyond what anyone predicted. "You're one of the most remarkable cases I've seen," she told him during a checkup. "Most locked-in patients who recover take years and never regain this level of function. You did it in months. Had good reasons to recover." Mary and Ruby. "Yes, I know. They're good for you. They're everything." The foundation's 1-year anniversary was planned for January 1st, but they decided to hold a smaller celebration on December 20th for the families they'd helped. It would be a party with food, music, and time for people to share their stories. Ruby was in charge of decorations. She'd spent weeks making paper snowflakes, drawing holiday scenes, and creating name tags for everyone. "Everyone needs to feel special," she explained to Silas. "So I'm making sure each person has something pretty with their name on it." The day of the party arrived with light snow falling. The foundation's office space, which Mary had made warm and welcoming, filled with families. Children ran around playing while parents connected and shared experiences. The staff circulated, making sure everyone had food and felt included. Silas gave a short speech, thanking everyone for being part of the foundation's first year. "This foundation exists because of one woman's kindness and one little girl's faith. Mary Johnson saw me when I was invisible. Ruby Johnson believed in me when hope seemed impossible. They taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who cares, who stays." He looked directly at Mary and Ruby. "They showed up for me. This foundation is our way of showing up for you." The room erupted in applause. Several people were crying, including Mary. After the speech, families mingled and talked. Silas watched Ruby moving through the crowd, making sure kids had enough cookies, helping younger children with their coats, chatting with everyone. She'd grown so much in the past year. Not just taller, though she'd shot up several inches, but more confident, more assured in her kindness. She'd learned from watching her mother run the foundation that helping people was important work. Near the end of the party, Ruby disappeared for a few minutes. When she returned, she was carrying a wrapped package, large and flat. "Silas," she called out, "can everyone be quiet for a minute? I have something important." The room quieted. Ruby walked to where Silas was standing and held up the package. I made you something. Well, I've been working on it all year. Mama helped with the frame, but the rest is mine. She handed him the package. Silas carefully unwrapped it, his hands still a bit shaky with fine motor tasks. Inside was a drawing, professionally framed. The drawing showed 3 figures standing together, holding hands. But this wasn't like Ruby's earlier simple drawings. This one was detailed, colored carefully with background elements and thought-out composition. On the left was Mary, wearing her blue foundation director's blazer. In the middle was Ruby in her red dress, now drawn at her current height rather than her 7-year-old size. On the right was Silas, standing tall with his cane, wearing a green shirt. Behind them was the foundation building. Around them were other figures, other families, connected by thin lines that showed how they were all linked together. At the top, Ruby had written in her improved handwriting, "Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who shows up and stays." At the bottom was a dedication, "For Silas Hayes who showed up for us. Love, Ruby and Mary." Silas couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he stared at the drawing. It captured everything he'd learned this year, everything that mattered, everything he'd almost missed by being too focused on business and money. Ruby looked worried. "Do you like it? I wanted to show how we're all family now. Not just us 3 but everyone the foundation helps. We're all connected." Silas managed to get words out through his tears. "It's perfect. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Mary stepped forward, putting her arm around Ruby. "She's been planning this for months. She wanted to capture what you've built here. What we've built together. This is..." Silas couldn't finish. He just held the drawing carefully like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. The party continued around them, but Silas stood still, holding Ruby's drawing. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago. Successful, wealthy, alone. He'd had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. That man had died in the car accident on that icy road. The man who'd emerged, the one standing here now, was different. He'd been locked inside his own body, forced to listen as people dismissed him, discounted him, tried to steal from him. He'd felt more helpless and alone than ever before. But then Mary had walked into his room and seen him. She treated him like a person when everyone else saw a problem. She'd shared her life, her stories, her daughter. She'd believed in his recovery when belief seemed foolish. She'd fought for him when he couldn't fight for himself. And Ruby. Beautiful, bright, kind Ruby. She talked to him like a friend, drawn pictures for him, believed absolutely that he would get better. She'd seen him as family before he understood what family meant. Together they'd saved him. Not just from physical paralysis, but from a life of emotional isolation. They'd shown him what actually mattered: connection, kindness, purpose, love. Later that evening, after the party ended and they were cleaning up, Mary found Silas sitting quietly, still holding Ruby's framed drawing. "You okay?" she asked gently. "More than okay. I'm happy. Really truly happy. For maybe the first time in my life." Mary sat beside him. "You've earned that happiness. Look at what you've built. This foundation has changed lives. We've built. You, me, Ruby. All of us together. Together. Yes, that's the secret, isn't it? Nothing we did was possible alone. But together we could do anything." Silas looked at the drawing again. The 3 of them holding hands, connected to all the other families, all part of one big web of support and care. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I should have said months ago." "What's that?" "I love you. Both of you. You're my family. The only family that's ever really mattered." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "We love you too, Silas. You're Ruby's person. The one she turns to when she needs help or wants to share good news. You're her chosen uncle, her special friend, her hero. And you're my best friend. My partner in this foundation work. The person I trust most in the world." She paused, then added softly, "My family." They sat together in comfortable silence, holding Ruby's drawing between them. Outside, snow continued falling, covering the city in white. Inside, in the foundation's warm offices, 2 people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances sat surrounded by evidence of what they'd built. Not a business empire. Not wealth or properties or acquisitions. But something far more valuable: a community of care. A web of support. A family not bound by blood but by choice, by showing up, by staying. Ruby came running back into the room, having finished putting away the last of the decorations. "Can we get hot chocolate? There's a place down the street that's still open." "Absolutely," Silas said. "Let's celebrate properly." As the 3 of them walked down the snowy street toward the cafe, Ruby held both their hands. Silas on one side, Mary on the other. She swung their arms slightly, happy and carefree, completely secure in the knowledge that she was loved and protected. Passers-by saw them and smiled. A black woman, a white man and a black child, clearly together, clearly family. Not in the traditional sense but in the way that mattered most. They got their hot chocolate and sat by the window watching snow fall. Ruby told them about her plans for the foundation's next year, her ideas for new drawings, her dreams for how they could help even more families. "We should have a kids program," she said. "So kids with sick parents have someone to talk to. Because it's scary when your parent is sick. I remember when Daddy got hurt. It was the worst day ever." Mary and Silas exchanged glances. Ruby rarely talked about Jerome's death directly, but when she did, it was with this kind of practical wisdom. "That's a good idea," Mary said. "We could have counselors and group activities. And art therapy," Ruby added. "Drawing helps when you're sad." "I know because I used to draw pictures of Daddy after he died. It made me feel closer to him." "Art therapy is perfect," Silas agreed. "You could even help design the program." Ruby beamed. "Really? I could help. You're part of this foundation. Your ideas matter." As they talked and planned and dreamed, Silas felt something he'd never experienced in 52 years of life: completeness. He wasn't missing anything. He wasn't striving for the next achievement or acquisition. He wasn't empty despite his success. He was just here, present with people he loved who loved him back. His business partners had been right about one thing. The old Silas had never cared about anyone but himself. He'd been too busy building wealth to notice he was impoverishing his soul. But that Silas was gone. The car accident had destroyed him. The new Silas, the one Ruby had helped create, the one Mary had believed in, cared deeply. About Mary and Ruby, about the families they served, about using his resources to make the world a little bit better. That night, as Silas got ready for bed in his apartment, he hung Ruby's drawing on the wall opposite his bed. It was the last thing he'd see before sleeping and the first thing he'd see when waking. 3 figures holding hands. Family. Before the accident, he'd had everything except what mattered. After the accident, he'd lost almost everything except what mattered most. And in that loss, he'd finally found what he'd been missing his entire life: purpose, connection, and love. Frank and Todd had stolen nothing. They tried but they'd failed. Because you can't steal what truly matters. You can't take someone's capacity for love or their chosen family or their sense of purpose. Diane had wanted his money, his company, his assets. She was welcome to try. Because Silas had already won the only competition that mattered. He had Ruby's drawings on his walls. He had Mary's voice on his phone. He had a foundation helping families who needed support. He had reasons to wake up each morning that had nothing to do with profit margins or stock portfolios. He'd been paralyzed, helpless, voiceless. And in that complete vulnerability, he'd finally learned to truly live. As Silas drifted off to sleep, he thought about Jerome. The man he'd never met but whose wisdom guided everything. Jerome had been right all along. Rich isn't about money. It's about having people who love you and being able to help others. By that measure, Silas Hayes was the richest man alive. But really it was a beginning. The foundation continued growing, helping more families each year. Ruby grew up involved in the work, eventually going to college for social work. She never forgot the lessons she learned from her mother's strength and Silas's transformation. Mary continued as director, expanding programs and reaching more communities. She never remarried, but she built a full life surrounded by chosen family and meaningful work. And Silas kept improving. He walked without a cane within 2 years. He spoke without any impediment within 3. But he never forgot where he'd been, never lost sight of what mattered. Every morning he looked at Ruby's drawing. 3 figures holding hands. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who shows up and stays. Mary and Ruby had shown up when he was at his lowest. They'd stayed through his recovery. They'd become his family when he'd thought family was something he'd never have. And Silas had shown up for them too. Not with money, though that helped. But with presence, with care, with genuine love. Because in the end, that's what saved them all. Not wealth or success or business acumen. But love. Pure, simple, transformative love. The kind of love that sees someone when they're invisible. The kind of love that believes in recovery when hope seems foolish. The kind of love that builds families from choice rather than obligation. That was the real miracle. Not Silas's physical recovery, though that was remarkable. But the recovery of his humanity. His capacity to care. His ability to love and be loved. He'd been locked in his body for months. But he'd been locked out of real life for 52 years. Mary and Ruby had freed him from both prisons. And for that, Silas Hayes would be grateful every day for the rest of his life.